Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Joey Q Show. It's Friday, March 5th, and spring training is officially underway. Last time on the show, you heard from Ken Allison, the head writer of our Overtime Heroic baseball writing column. And today, I'm going to bring on a fellow Overtime Heroic writer as well, and his name is Alex Clark. Alex, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm right here with you, Joey. Glad to be here on the show with you.
Nice, man. Nice. So, yeah, thanks for jumping on with us this morning. Talk a little bit about baseball. And, well, let's get started with you, man. Where are you coming from to us with us today? And tell us a little bit about yourself and your Overtime Heroics writing.
Yeah, so I'm coming at you from the Pacific Northwest in beautiful Seattle, Washington. Been a diehard Mariner fan ever since I was 1 year old when the 95 slide happened. But
Yeah,
no, for me, I'm a broadcaster and writer full time, as well as I do other jobs to supplement all that fun stuff. But for me, it's all about baseball. It's all about talking baseball. One of the reasons why I'm here.
absolutely, man. And you just stole it from me. I was just about to say that. That is why you're here. Yeah, man. Let me relate to that a little bit. 1995, that team was absolutely loaded. That Mariners team, A-Rod, the big unit, Griffey Jr. Let me ask you, man, is that your favorite baseball moment of all time?
It's definitely one of them. I would say I'll show this off real quick. So Griffey's my favorite of all time, as he is for a bunch of other people out there. I was at his Hall of Fame induction over in Cooperstown back before the whole everything happened. But he's also I credit him for my love of sport to the point where if I can show this kind of on camera, I actually have a 24 tattoo on my arm for that. But no, I've been a fan ever since I could remember, and there's still photos of me at 1 year old in our house watching that game with my little Griffey jersey turned around on the opposite side because I thought the number should be on the front.
Dude, that is awesome. And I love your fandom, man. Thank you for joining me in the wild craze of our love for our teams, man. I haven't gone to those extents with the ink on the body, but like that's really awesome, man. So yeah, right now that we're talking about the Mariners in 1995, a fantastic year. Let's rewind a little bit back to 2020 in a shortened 60-game season. And, the AM spin is just under 500, but massive bright spot in Kyle Lewis winning the Rookie of the Year. Break it down for me. Tell me what a little couple highs and lows of what you thought of last year's M squad.
Well, you said it immediately. Kyle Lewis was the biggest bright spot for the team that year. And it's always funny because go back even 2 years prior, no one was talking about him. And the reason why is because he had injuries. Again, he broke his leg down in the minors. He was a player that, he had outstanding talent, but it was just he had injury concern. So when he came up, I've always been a fan of Lewis. I watched him back when he was playing over in Everett with the Aqua Sox over at the short season A-ball. In fact, his very first major league home run almost hit my car. But no, just watching him come up and rise through the minor leagues, I knew that he was going to be something special, and I've never been so happy to be right. But no, he was the big star for Seattle last year. And what's really good is that Seattle, since 2001, has always been saying next year. Again, they have the longest postseason drought in North American sports right now. And so we just keep on saying next year. And the problem has always been with the team that the management just hasn't worked. They keep getting the prospects and then they trade away the prospects. And that is the big problem. You can't just keep doing that. And so to see that they now have Dipoto, who's finally got the young talent and starting to really bring them up. We're starting to see a youth uprising here in Seattle. And what you saw in 2020, where the team was just below 500, but the young studs, the young stars were the ones that are really making the names for themselves. That's what you're going to see going forward with the team. The biggest issue, though, with 2020 is pitching. And that's still the issue going into 2021 is relief pitching, especially. The bullpen does not exist. There are very few people there. There are not very many big names there. And last year really showed that. I mean, in a shortened 60-game season, you still had 6 different pitchers recording a save. That's a problem when you're going closer by committee and you don't have any sort of solidified arm. I mean, Taylor Williams was the number one closer for the team, and he was I don't want to say a reject, but we picked him up from the Brewers. Yes, from the Brewers. And so it's like you don't have any defined names on that relieving core, and that was the big downfall for Seattle. I can tell you right now, if you had two relievers on that team, that Mariners squad may make the playoffs.
Yeah, and you got some help with Ken Giles, coming up, and then also a little, segue. So the big maple leaf is back, right?
Oh, I love James Paxton. No, yeah, that was a great signing. Again, I actually wrote an article both on him and on the Ken Giles signing for Overtime Heroics. But for James Paxton, signing back with Seattle makes a ton of sense. They say that there is no team that loves you like your first team, and Seattle was the first major league team for Paxton. He pitched incredible with them. He threw a no-hitter with Seattle. When they traded away Paxton to the Yankees, it was really the start of the all right, we are rebuilding, aren't we? Because you trade away arguably your best player to the Yankees for three players, including one big-time prospect in Justice Sheffield, and you're like, okay, so I guess now we're gonna start throwing everything away. Now the team's gonna start building from the ground up, building for the prospects. And I was for the move as much as I loved Paxton, but I was for it because I knew that as much as we needed an ace, the value on him was much higher than what we would have been able to get out of him. So from that, I'm glad to see him back, though, in Seattle. He's happy to be back in Seattle, and I talked about this a little bit in my article, but I think that this is not going to be the last you're going to see of Paxton in Seattle. I think this is going to be a very interesting year where this is almost an audition, not for Paxton to Seattle, but from Seattle to Paxton to try and get him to sign long-term with the Mariners, seeing that 2022 and plus are really the years that Seattle could break that postseason drought.
Yeah, man, those are some good points right there. And obviously, when we were talking about topics, I didn't want to bring up the old postseason drought. But thank you for doing that for me and not making me look like a big bad jerk.
It's commonplace for us at this point. It's kind of like telling us water's wet. Water's wet, the sky is blue, and the Mariners don't make the playoffs. It just happens.
No, man, you guys are on the up and up for sure. Like I said, just even in this shortened 60-game season, there is some bright spots and some highlights. And but like we said, you're bringing back in your Ken Giles to bolster that bullpen. You're gonna get your ace back from 2 years ago trade, which leads me to bring up Justice Sheffield. Do you see him as a breakout player this year?
I do. Justice has made a lot of really good strides over the last year or so. The 60-game season really showed a lot about what he can do. We've always known that he was a lefty with a lively arm, with a good little breaking ball in there. The problem with him has always been control. Can he control that fastball of his? Can he learn to go long in games? And that's something that's going to be tested here in 2021. In the shortened 2020 season, I mean, you didn't need to go that long and for that long because it was only a 60-game stretch. Now we're back to a 162-game season. If he could continue making those strides that he did in 2020, there's no reason why he can't be a legitimate number two, potentially even number one in the future. But right now, the 1 and 2 is pretty set for Seattle, with Marco Gonzalez leading the charge at number one, and then the Big Maple making his return back at the number 2 spot.
Awesome, man. And there's some good additions, and like I said, some things to bank on from last year. So this is Alex Clark with me, an Overtime Heroics writer. With me, we write with Ken Allison, who you have seen on this show before. He is the head of the department, and you can tweet Alex at the Sports Guy 242 on Twitter. So, all right, with all these additions, with some positive momentum going into 2020, 2021, how do you see the M's finishing in the West this year after finishing third behind a tough A's club and the always solid Astros?
Yeah. A moment ago, Ken Giles won't be joining the Mariners in 2021. He's still going to be recovering from surgery. So he actually won't be joining the team until 2022, which I think is actually pretty all right, just because he'll be joining when I project the Mariners to get into that playoff window. But on that same kind of note as well, I don't see the Mariners making the playoffs in 2021. As much as I would love to, I would absolutely love for them to break that drought in 2021. But no, I see 2022 as the year for that. As for next season, I see them finishing in the same place. I see them finishing in third, with the Astros and the A's battling out for the top spots. The loser of that may get a wild card spot, may not. For Seattle to really contend, they need more relief pitching. You need at least 1 to 2 more solid names. You're able to get a couple other names. You got Rafael from Texas, so you still have a couple of people, but they just don't have enough. The offense looks fantastic though this season. For what we've seen so far in the the spring training games, we have been seeing homer after homer after homer, and it has been beautiful. So you see this and you're like, okay, the offense is fine. Now we got to get back to working on the defense. You got to work on the pitching staff. I think they're going to make more strides. I think Seattle could very well finish above 500 this season, but I mean, I don't see them winning the division, not with the additions that the A's have made, and not with still, even though the losses that the Astros have taken, they still are a solid ball club.
Absolutely. You mentioned the firepower of the offense. I'm looking at the roster just real quick, and I see J.P. Crawford, I see Mitch Haniger, Kyle Lewis. You know what I mean? There's something. Obviously Kyle Seager is a big bat playing over there on third base. So yeah, for sure. I don't see why you guys are not going to be able to at least make some noise and improve on already pretty good season from last year. Maybe not to everybody's expectations, but considering the other years, you know what I mean? And so, all right. So speaking on the AL West and in the American League, tell me a little bit of what you see coming in the 2021 season in the American League as a whole, and who do you think may surprise and make a run towards the playoffs?
So, okay, I'll go division by division for this one. So for the West, one of the things that's really interesting for the West this year is that this is the first time in a good few years that the division itself is really wide open. Again, the Astros, like we talked about, they're still good, but they are hurting. They have lost a good few pieces. So they're not the powerhouse that they have been for years and years and years. The A's find ways to win ball games. I don't understand how, but Billy Beane is a genius. They find ways to win ball games and make the playoffs. The Mariners very well could surprise people. Again, if the relief pitching can stay a little more consistent and the offense does what we're looking at. By the way, I'm going to throw a quick shout on this one. You talked about names that you're looking on the lineup. Ty France, keep an eye on that kid, or third baseman. He is the big boy. I see you wearing the Padres hat, and it doesn't make me want to bring up the trade where we absolutely fleeced you guys for 3 really good players, but we'll talk about that later. We could jeer about that later. Then we bring up the Central, and I think on this one, this is finally the White Sox time. This is a time where the White Sox have been building and building and building. I mean, they were the everlasting tank for the longest time. And finally, those young pieces are looking great. Again, you've got an MVP over at first base in Jose Abreu. You've got a runner-up in the American League Rookie of the Year in Luis Robert. You've got Yon Moncada. You've got Eloy Jimenez. You've got amazing players on that team. I think it's truly the White Sox time right now in the Central. And then you take a look at the East. And the East is a weird division. I really think the East is probably the most interesting division this year. Just because the Bo Sox, they've got pieces, but I don't think they have enough to compete with the rest of the teams. The Blue Jays have been making tremendous additions, and they've already been adding as the years have been going on. They've been slowly creeping up and becoming that big team there. And then you have the evil empire in the Yankees that are still the evil empire in the Yankees. They're still a really dang good ball club. I mean, what else can you say? So overall, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the East finishes. But I think the rivalry this year between Bo Sox and Yankees, it's going to go in favor of the Evil Empire.
Yeah, I can't argue with anything there, especially the White Sox. Another breakout player from last year and actually the year before too, Tim Anderson.
Yep.
So what they maybe possibly, if you want to make an argument for what they lack in pitching, I mean, that that lineup 1 through 9 is absolutely filthy. So yeah, for sure, White Sox looking to break out and bounce back onto the scene. Like they did in the low 2000s and get back into the playoff race. In the East, Go ahead, sorry.
No, yeah. Well, you brought up the offense. Obviously, is fantastic. Again, that's many people I brought up too. But don't sleep on the pitching either. Like the pitching, they've got some really big names there. Lucas Giolito is looking fantastic, and then you've got the young fiery left Garrett Crochet. I mean, they've got guys that really can throw the ball. So again, the offense is fantastic, but then you look a little bit deeper into that pitching staff, and there's some guys that can really surprise you. I mean, do they still have Dallas Keuchel as well, I think? Just as a little anchor to kind of help anchor that rotation? I mean, fair enough. But, they've got some really good people. They've got some great names that are really starting to figure things out here, and that offense working fantastic. But the pitching, I think, could also surprise people this year.
Yeah, and then if they are feeling froggy, the old White Sox, I mean, they've got a stud in the up and coming too, Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn is a big powered bat. I know him very well from I'm a big Arizona Wildcats college baseball fan, and so when he was at Cal, he was a man amongst boys every game, and so you couldn't pitch to that guy, and if you did, it was definitely a bomb or a ball in the gap, and a lot of runs were scoring. And definitely. So the White Sox do have Keuchel, so that's a good veteran presence in their rotation there. And just to make a little quick comment on the East, every year the East up and down is extremely strong. Like even when one team has a bad year, you still every game is in every AL East interdivision game is brutal, and it's extremely unpredictable. And now the Blue Jays are making a run. The Rays were just in the World Series last year. They're probably going to take a big step back this year and maybe even finish last place in that division. But
by the way, how are you enjoying Blake Snell already?
Yeah, so far so good. And honestly, man, I've expressed a lot of joy on my show here. Talked a lot about it with Ken. Talked a lot about it on other shows as well. And so absolutely, we are absolutely thrilled to have him. He is a monster presence in our rotation. Immediately goes to the ace. But it's also, you can argue that it might be Yu Darvish that takes the bump on game one as well. So the improvements cannot be talked about enough this year for the Padres. The excitement is through the roof. I'm trying to keep it contained because I don't want to be massively let down. But at least it's all there. Last year was phenomenal. Every game was the World Series for me last year. The Slam Diego Grand Slam stuff was waking my wife up at night. She wasn't a big fan of that. And then, we ran into the buzzsaw called the LA Dodgers in the playoffs. So, that kind of is what it is. And they're not going anywhere. So I'm hoping, obviously, for a repeat of a really solid year this year. I think the number is going to be quite good, quite big in the upper 90s for sure, maybe mid 90s, which is, we haven't seen that in a very long time, if ever, here in San Diego. So super pumped for that. I'm trying to keep my eye on spring training every day. It's tough with work, but I'm watching. Yeah, I'm watching what I can, and so far so good. And like I said, back to the excitement and the enthusiasm. And I immediately followed Snellzilla on Twitter, and he is showing a lot of love for that move. And it looks like the team is returning it, and the GM and just the overall the entire organization is just really happy to have him. So super pumped for this year. And every Dodger game, I'm gonna be on the edge of my seat, and I'm looking really forward to it.
What's really fun is the NL West is probably going to be the most fun division to watch this year, just because it's like you say, it's your team and it's the Dodgers, the Padres and Dodgers. For anyone again that has followed with Overtime Heroics for a little bit, I was the host of the West podcast for that, where along with my good buddy Joe. And what we talked about is that basically the entire division came down to Padres Dodgers, and we were even talking about that. The winner of the Padres-Dodgers series in the NLCS was going to be the winner of the World Series, and we ended up being right on that. Yeah. But what's really fun about it is, like, I really like the Padres. I really do. I have been a Padres fan kind of on and off for a while, but seeing you guys just completely explode onto the scene, all these big signings, all these big names, Fernando Tatis Jr. becoming Fernando Tatis Jr., and then you have all these guys ready to go, and the big problem is the fact that you're in the same division as the Dodgers that have a bank account that's basically a blank check. And it's honestly, it makes for really fun baseball to watch. But I really want to see how that's going to go. The NL West is the most interesting division in all of baseball, and it's purely because of those two teams.
You crushed that. That's absolutely correct. The Dodgers are probably going to win 100 games, but for sure, every Padres series with them this year is going to be electric. Like both stadiums, if we get fans in, hopefully this year, but it's going to be on TV. It's going to be on MLB Network. It's going to be showcased on national television, and for the first time, probably in my lifetime, I know I'm getting long in the tooth. For the first time in a long time, I can be excited about the Padres. The last time anything super extremely positive like this was 1998. Was 1998 when we were in the World Series with the Yankees, and don't get me started on that emotional roller coaster of actually not roller coaster. It stayed down the whole time, getting swept by the Yankees, and that probably one of the greatest baseball teams ever assembled. Went on to three-peat, you know what I mean? Here we were trying to stop a three-peat, and we just weren't ready at the time. And Bruce Bochy was our coach that year. And then he kind of was like, hey, man, I got you guys as far as I could. And then he went on to win 3 more World Series with the Giants. So that also hurts my heart very much. But yeah, NL West is pretty good. It's obviously a little top heavy right now. Colorado is always in the mix because they're going to put a lot of runs on you, especially at home. But losing Arenado, they may lose 100 games this year. They may lose 100 games. They're not looking solid. Always tough to go down to Arizona and beat the Diamondbacks. And then the Giants are still probably hanging out at the bottom. They're just not ready. They're still kind of rebuilding. They got a lot of old dudes. They got a lot of veteran, presence. But those World Series teams, there's only a handful of guys left from that squad. And that was a couple years ago, so they're even a little older. Buster Posey on the way out. Same with Longoria. That's just kind of how I see it. So if I had to rack and stack the NL West right now, I would go definitely Dodgers, Padres, probably Diamondbacks. They're a little bit more squared away. And then I'll go Giants, Rockies. I really do think the Rockies are going to go from nearly making the playoffs last year, or at least sneaking in there with the expansion of the playoffs, to all the way down to the bottom. Losing Arenado, it's going to be just Trevor Story and old Chuck, Longbeard Chuck. But that's only 2 guys. The pitching is always suspect in Colorado as well. I'm not seeing it out of those guys.
Rest in peace, Colorado, honestly. Again, go back even just a few years ago, and they were one of the scariest teams in baseball because they hit homer after homer, drove in run after run. You have a lineup that has Trevor Story, Chuck Nasty, and, again, Nolan Arenado. Now you have Arenado gone. He's now with the Cardinals. Chuck Nasty is getting old. And Trevor Story's on his way out. There's already been reports out that they're not going to have the budget to re-sign Trevor Story at the end of the season, which means that he's going to become a free agent and is going to get the Mundo Macho Dalla.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really sad to see because they've always been just pitching away, like from being like these amazing contenders. I mean, heck, go back a few years ago when I think it was what they signed Wade Davis to a big old contract to be the star closer, and his ERA blew up to 6. And it's not even so much because of him; it's because he's in a very stacked division, and Colorado, the ball just flies right off of the bats. I mean, it's a hitter's ballpark and a hitter's area. So the problem with the Rockies is that you really need to overcompensate for that pitching and then let the hitting really do its work. It doesn't matter if you score 10,000 runs a game if you give up 10,001. So
Absolutely.
that's the big problem with them. And I think you hit the nail on the head when it came to how the division's going to go this year. As much as I want the Padres to usurp the new Yankees, I mean the Dodgers, but I don't think it's going to happen. I just think the Dodgers are too good. Then afterwards, I think you got it right. I think the Diamondbacks are going to finish third. They still got good pieces. They're still learning. Ketel Marte, still a great player, another former Mariner. And then you have, then after that, then the Giants are on a bit of the upswing. I want to honestly say, yeah, they got the old guard starting to leave, but you brought up Buster Posey. He's replaced with Joey Bart's looking pretty good. Bart's looking fine. They've got a bunch of young guys. Yastrzemski's looking fine as well. They've got good young players. I think they're going to probably finish 4th overall. But then you have the rest in peace to the Colorado Rockies, man.
Yeah, and Story, he's going to get an extremely lucrative contract because he's still pretty young. They got him out there, in his low 20s, 22, 23, 24, and he just exploded. And so, honestly, when the Padres would win in Colorado, like my day would already be good because the Padres win. But I would be like, yeah, that's right, Colorado, that's right. I came in here and I beat you at your own game up here. And also just go reach back to the old Colorado Rocky days too. Like when you really analyze full spectrum, full big picture, they cannot get a marquee pitcher, Cy Young worthy, Cy Young conversation to come in there. I really do think the last time they had anybody that made that much noise was like Mike Hampton. And that was the 90s. So they got to homegrown a lot of their pitching. Right now, the Kyle Freeland is a good name. John Gray is still there. But yeah, I seriously thinking the Rockies go ballpark of 60 and 100, dead serious. That's just what it's looking like. There's not going to be any fire losing a guy like Arenado. They're gonna stick somebody in his place at third base after a platinum winning gold glove winner was there. A staple in their lineup and on the defensive side for years. A lot of my Colorado Rocky fans are going to watch this and be like, dude, leave us alone. But that's how I see it. And then that's an echo of some of my text messages to them.
I gotta admit, I empathize very much with the Colorado Rockies. Again, the whole idea is that you can't recruit a pitcher to go play for the Rockies. For the longest time, you could not recruit a hitter to go play for the Mariners. For the longest time, we were the definition of pitcher's ballpark, and then we ended up bringing in the fences, and that kind of helped. But now, finally, we're starting to get offense really to work. But, I mean, so I understand that idea. You can't win if you can't bring in talent. You can grow as much talent as you want, but then you got to pay that talent, too. And then if you can't supplement talent from free agency, then you're not going to win. Free agency is probably one of the most important for baseball as it is for any other sport. I mean, again, that's a bit of a hot take, I think, because football would have something to say about that. But in baseball, you just have so many people on the team. You have so many people that play so many different skilled positions that you have to be able to make sure that you fill in the right people at the right time, as well as have your organizational depth. So I empathize with the Rockies. It's going to be really weird to see someone else play third base besides Nolan Arenado. That's someone trying to carry on that guard. And the other thing that's going to be really interesting to see as well with this is that there was no minor league season last year. You had the taxi squad. Yeah. You had all that ready to go to bring in other people. But the minor leaguers basically had a year off except for a squad of like 25, 30 guys that were just doing practices basically the entire time. There was no real games to work on. You had these just little inter squad games, but definitely not the same as seeing, the Dodgers minor league squads or the Rangers minor league squads. So I think having no minor league season is going to have a much bigger effect than people are really, really giving credit to.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to have minor league baseball back. You're right. Even though it was just 60 games, and we were all expecting some stumbles and some injury problems and just some kind of weird looking baseball, so to speak, just because nobody's really playing and these guys aren't getting the quality at bats they are in AAA and AA. But yeah, living here in Las Vegas, I'm really excited to get the Aviators back, and that is Oakland's affiliate. So I get to watch your opponent players every day. So yeah, and let's you mentioned ballparks, and one of my favorite ballparks is actually yours. And we moved on to, it's called T-Mobile or T-Mobile Field now, right?
T-Mobile Park, and never mention that name to me again.
T-Mobile Park, sorry, T-Mobile Park.
No,
yeah,
yay. I have so many things wrong with it, but thankfully we have a sponsor that gives us a name. Yeah.
Yeah, so my connection to that is hands down one of my favorite stadiums after Petco for sure. I used to live up there. I lived up in the Tacoma area for 7 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so I used to go to Mariners games all the time. And when it would take me back a little bit when I would go to Safeco Field and just walk in, get the garlic fry smell, just get in, and that ballpark is beautiful. The ocean views, the Space Needle right there. And the architectural way that it was put together too is very, very unique with that field cover rolling over, the train coming by, kind of like the Astros, but at least your train in Seattle has a functionality, so it's actually legit going by.
It's an actual train, not just for decoration.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the port is right there. So yeah, it's absolutely a fantastic field. Facility. There's a lot of things to do in that area as well. Pre-game, Pyramid Ale House right across the street. One of my favorite places to go before a game. So absolutely great park. Sad to see the name Safeco go away, but that's just how it goes, right?
I just wish they would go back. They would do. I respect T-Mobile, the fact that they're willing to buy out the name and all that fun stuff. But I just wish they would do. I wish we would go back to it. There was a time where, yes, they would have a sponsor, but then they would name the field something and then maybe say presented by. Where I wish they would do something like that, like say for Seattle, do it like say Dave Niehaus Field presented by T-Mobile. Yeah. I think at that point you would win over so many fans. If your whole point is to bring brand awareness to yourself by having the field named after you, getting over with the fans that actually, go there on a whatever basis, and then making them as happy as you possibly can on that front, I think is going to give you better name recognition than anything, especially since you're going to say, again, for example, House Field presented by T-Mobile Park, say by T-Mobile. Then you would get the name recognition. You would still have of what the fans and what people you're working with.
No, man, that's a great point, especially in a town like Seattle, where there's a plethora of sponsorship, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean. There's a lot of guys that got some big money up there, and there's a lot of big corporations up there. So I'm very, very surprised we haven't seen a Microsoft Stadium, Microsoft Field, or a Boeing Stadium, because the stadium across the street has changed a lot of names as well.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny because there are, like you said, there are a ton of corporations, and so when Safeco Field was going through that name change, there are a lot of ideas of what it could be, and so they had Boeing Field as one of them, like an airfield. They had Microsoft Stadium for that, but the one that just kept on making me laugh is that Starbucks headquarters is actually right next to the field.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it is like just
Right.
down, just like 5 minutes down the road. And so there was a lot of joke they were gonna bring it back to Polo, and call it Starbucks Grounds. And I'm like, I hate that so much. Please stop it. Please no.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that in all those corporations you brought up, I'm a little surprised you didn't bring up Amazon. Amazon is right now one of the most important companies at this point because of, well, what we live in right now. And again, based here in Seattle. So I thought there was going to be at least some work on from, there's going to be some work to maybe make Amazon buy the team. And honestly, I'm happy they didn't. But the one thing I just don't like with T-Mobile Park is that now there's just random pink plastered around the stadium at places, and I just not a fan. Not a fan.
I got you, man.
And I don't care if it's actually magenta. It's pink. Sorry, T-Mobile. It's pink.
No, I mean, thanks for the info. What I know of Amazon, I didn't know the headquarters were up there, which makes that area probably extremely difficult to live in, with only a couple of highways as lifelines. I definitely was a part of that for quite a few years. But have you ever been to Petco?
Yes, I have actually. So I'll tell kind of a little story actually on this. A couple years ago, so you brought up that you were University of Arizona, right? Or ASU?
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
I am a Washington State Cougar. And so back when I was when I was at Washington State, I was a broadcaster for the student radio there, and I got sent up to call two different Holiday Bowls over there where WSU was playing. And so I was calling in it's like in the football stadium over there, but because I'm me, I found a way. I made sure I got to go tour Petco a little bit, and I gotta say that is one of the most beautiful ballparks. Like, I've always adored that one. When you talk about Seattle having really good terrain around it, just looking at Petco Field itself, Petco Park, just looking at the field itself is just gorgeous. Everything about it looks so modern, but it stays so true to what California is. A very outdoorsy stadium that really likes having the sun there. It's a really, really good time. I love the entire area. Also having the statue to the boy that you're repping the jersey of makes me just immeasurably happy. He's one of my favorites of all time. And if I was to ever have a Padres jersey, that's the one I would get.
Nice. Yeah, Petco, there's so much more to it than just the ballpark, you know what I mean? And I love that's kind of how I would say in the last like 30 years, that's been the MLB's MO in stadiums, right? Starting with like Camden, Camden Yards, the new modernization of facilities and baseball, like to bring more than just like this open bowl with that fits 80,000 people. Like they've done a really good job of making the higher levels come down and be really a part of the game. Petco does that as well. T-Mobile Park does that very well. I remember sitting up in the upper of the stands at up there at Old Safeco and just being like, man, this is still a really good view for $15 at the time. And so, yeah, I used to go to a lot of games up there. But yeah, Petco, like the park, they do like, I wrote an article on it as well. I'm not sure if you caught it, but they do like beer fest out there. They do beer fest before the game. They do this other thing that I want to do it before I die, where they do a 9-hole golf course inside the stadium.
Really? I haven't actually heard about that one.
From like the top, the upper levels, and like the midway levels, and even from the ground, they do like this little 9-hole par 3 thing, and it's like a massive team building event for like businesses and corporations and for fans, if you can stomach how much it costs to go out there and do it. But it's really cool. It doesn't get enough pub. It does not get enough pub. And I actually failed to mention it in my article. Totally forgot. But yeah, man, it's like a 9-hole little course, kind of like Top Golf. At Petco, man, it's really, really, really cool. The area is beautiful. The views are beautiful. To incorporate some of the city to the Western Metal Supply. company building. Like, how cool is that, man?
I mean,
That's really, really.
yeah. And to be fair, I will say one of my favorite memories of that is sadly not a Padres memory. It is a Mets memory, as that was where Bartolo Colon hit his one and only home run off of. So sorry, I had to throw that to you. But come on. I mean, even if even as not as a Padres guy, you have to still hang your head and go like, okay, that was awesome.
I mean, what do you do? What do you do, right? Like when any pitcher hits a home run, because you know what? Madison Bumgarner does it all the time out there too. I mean, it's, Petco is actually notoriously known for like some pretty short porches in the corners there. And then Greinke does it. I feel like he does it when I'm at the game too. And I'm like,
always right.
Why are you swinging at that pitch? But yeah, man. And so, always good times at both Petco for me and at the old Safeco and now T-Mobile Park. Just two fantastic West Coast facilities that are must-see if you can get out there and get to a game. If your favorite team is playing in one of those arenas or one of those stadiums, you got to go up there. You will not, especially if you go up to Seattle in the summer, you will not regret it.
There's a reason why T-Mobile Park Safeco Field is my second home. It is absolutely beautiful there. There is not a bad seat in the house. Anywhere you go to, you're going to see something great. Whether or not you're looking like you're behind home plate and you're looking at the field, you're still going to be able to see the beautiful skyline over to the side, or if you're in row 300, you're still going to see something beautiful. And that's one of the things I love about the ballpark is that no matter where you're at in the park, you're still going to see something great. And that's like it's beautiful. It's one, in my opinion, one of the top 5 ballparks in all of baseball, just for sights wise and how it looks. I know that's kind of a little blasphemous to say when we have all these classic stadiums, but I mean, you just take a look at what's going on here. It's really beautiful. So actually, I wanted to ask you something here again as a Padres guy. There's a lot of buzz going on around the guy Fernando Tatis Jr. Tatis signing a contract that I hate to say what my age will be when that contract is finally done. But here's the thing that gets me, and I want to ask you your opinion on it, is that he has yet to play 160 plus games. He has yet to play a ton. So is this contract premature? I need to know.
So I see what you're doing right here. You're going after the old chat group that everybody has the same opinion. I know what you're doing. So just for clarification, all of the overtime heroic writers from each one of our teams and areas, we all have a chat. There's probably 20 to 30 people in there. And every time El Nino, Fernando Tatis gets mentioned, everybody starts talking about, he hasn't played 100 games. He hasn't played 160 games. He's 21 years old. And he's a 5-tool player. He's just as exciting and then some than the last 2 guys that we had signing these big contracts that everybody was like, what the heck? And I'm talking about Mike Trout, and I'm talking about Bryce Harper. He also plays a position that is extremely key to your defensive, awareness out in the field, shortstop. And have you seen some of the plays he makes out there?
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He's absolutely electric. We could not be more happy with him. And also, let's do a shout out real quick to said Chicago White Sox. We got him for James Fields, man. Who's talking about fleecing who now?
I was about to say, geez, there are so many fleecing trades on here. And if you want to go there, I have one more fleece trade for you. But I want to finish here on Tatis here for you. But I do want to know one more. There's one more trade I do want to bring up after this.
All right. Oh, yeah. So, Tatis, man. So I don't get wrapped around about length of contract, all right? Because the value is going to be on the front end. Let's be real. In any contract that has a lot of length, especially anything in the ballpark of 10 years, a very young player. But I don't get wrapped around the axle because that's like a lifetime contract, right? If there was such a thing back in the day, we did the same thing with Tony Gwynn, right? And he almost left, but he actually said, no, I want to stay here. The Yankees threw a bunch of money at him. That's a topic for another day. But this is a lifetime contract because we want him to stay. forever. And there's no way to show that unless by giving a lot, what I mean? Like providing this massively long contract. And it's an investment. It's an investment, and there will be, return on that. And if he's in his mid-30s and still a Padre, he's absolutely right. He mentioned having a statue right next to Tony Gwynn, and he will. He will have that. And I think also it's a testament to something that should probably trend more towards staying loyal to your teams. And that's just my opinion. I understand baseball is a business, and I want everybody to be happy. And I want guys to move from losing teams, to good teams, if that's so how they choose. But there's something to be said about guys that stay with the same team forever. Like they're literally, whoever is in the Hall of Fame with the same team forever, there's not one thing you can say negative about them. You know what I mean? And there's only a handful of guys that are in that category because some way, somehow, either the team has moved on from them or like the player has moved on from the team. And it happens, man. It happens. So, I'm really happy with it. I'm not worried about the length. I'm not worried about the money because AJ Preller has a plan. He's got it figured out. These guys are smart. They're going all in and then some. And if it was going to bury the team some way, somehow, if they were worried about him not playing and, getting injury prone. And also, let me rewind to 19. That was we brought him up. He was 20 years old. And that dude plays at 110%. And that's how he got injured. He was headfirst sliding. I think it became nagging is what happened. And then we just shut him down the last month of the season. So I believe it was a hand injury or like a hamstring injury. I can't remember. But like he slid weird and then it just didn't go away. And so we had to shut him down. So of course he didn't play a full season that year, but we're out of contention. And so last year, he played all 60 games, right? Like we only had 60 games. So I don't think that I understand the knock of that, but also, yeah, it's an investment. Is it a kind of a gamble? Yes, but like those are the things you need to do to right the ship. And that's what you need to do when you have this momentum, you double down on it, right? And that's what the Padres are doing. I believe in AJ Preller. I've always believed in him because he was the Rangers GM when they did their turnaround and were stacked every year and going to the World Series or being in the playoffs every year. So I believe in him. It didn't start out well. I think he came out a little aggressive with signing a lot of those, guys like James Shields. We took the Upton brothers. We had Matt Kemp. That showed that we wanted to win, but those players just didn't fit that mold at the time, and there was nobody around them. So then they were expected to like carry the load, and there was no pitching, there was no nothing for those guys. That was around 2015, 2016. So it just didn't work out. This is completely different. Starting with the move with Hosmer, I was like, oh yeah. Then the move with Machado. And that just sealed the deal because we had Tatis in our back pocket in the minors, ready to go. And a fun fact, did you know that in 19, Preller was going to send Tatis to the minors after spring training? And Machado and Hosmer took Preller out for a steak dinner and said, dude, you got to bring this guy up. If you don't bring him up right now, like we quit. they dropped somewhat of an ultimatum, so to speak, on him. And so I love that, man. I love that veteran presence. I love that they're willing to speak up, and I love that they see what everybody, kind of the fans, see as well. But also that it just took that little tick, and then AJ was like, you know what, you boys are right. And then the rest is history, man. So I don't got a problem with it. Something that kind of like I wasn't real sure about was the international signing of Kim. I just think that like he's, like I said, it's an all-in move, but like where our pieces were, how we did last year. We got the Cronenworth. He's gonna probably get supplanted, and Kim is gonna go in there and play second base for him now. But Cronenworth almost won Rookie of the Year in the NL last year. So I wasn't real sure about that, and I don't think it's a negative testament to Cronenworth. I think it's just like stacking the chips, man. I think that's what they're doing, and they're just showing the fan base, MLB, the West Coast, the Dodgers, everybody that like we are not playing around anymore. Let's go.
I mean, you can't be playing around when you look at the Dodgers. You look at what they're doing. No. I mean, for heck's sake, they signed Trevor Bauer in the offseason to make a pitching rotation that, honestly, all 7 of the guys that should be starting pitchers on that can be starting pitchers on any ball club. And that's what's really scary about the team. And I agree to a lot of the points you said there about Tatis. The fact that when you have this momentum, if you squander that momentum, then you're just going to be known as a failure. If you don't at least try for it, then you got to go something. The biggest thing that kind of worries me when it comes to it is the fact that, again, he has been injured and that he hasn't played that 100 games. And I know, yeah, one time. But but no, like, I know, but like when that happens when you're young, that worries because that means that it can happen again. And I know I'm not putting it as the big one. The thing that worries me is that there's not been a huge sample size, and you guys are giving him huge money, very big money. And again, if it pays off, it's going to be fantastic. There is no problem, especially within the next, say, 5-6 years. If he plays any level like he has for the last year and then the 2020 season, then you guys you hit the jackpot. But I've also seen, as a Mariner fan, I have seen it just completely crash and burn, where you give the big money and then they just fall off the face of the planet, where there's all the hype around them. Mariner fans remember the name Dustin Ackley, where he was the number 2 draft pick right behind one Mr. Steven Strasburg. Yeah. And guess what happened with Ackley? Oh, yeah. His Twitter account was more famous than him. And, well, I should say not his Twitter, his Beard's Twitter account was more well-known than he was. And that's what's kind of funny. That's what always kind of worries me is that I'm okay with the big names, the guys that have been around for a few years, getting the big contracts because, you know what? Yeah, it makes sense. They've had a couple years to prove it. Tatis, we're still a very small sample size. Do I think he's a great player? Absolutely. I think he is one of the next big faces in baseball, and he is competing with Trout right now for being the face of baseball. But I also think that he needs a little more time. So do I think the deal was a mistake? Not necessarily. But I don't think I would have the cojones to make that deal happen.